Welcome, welcome everybody to St. John's University. It's fantastic to have you all here. You know, you may have heard from Abbot John earlier, it is Earth Day today, and it seems like Mother Nature and God conspired to put the Johnnies up 40 love right out of the gates. So this is fantastic. My name is Pete Amon, class of 90. I'm on the institutional advancement team, and it's an honor to be here. During this week of thanks, really, we've had several events this week thanking our benefactors for what they've done for St. John's. With MPR this week celebrating its 50th anniversary and honoring, Bill Kling, and now with the dedication of the Chang Tennis Complex and honoring our lead benefactors and everybody else who has made this a fantastic project and now facility. So I'd like to welcome to the microphone Abbot John Claassen to say an opening prayer.
I'd like to just lead us in a prayer. We praise you, O God of all creation, for gathering us on this Earth Day, high above the Sagatagan, where the oak and pine and other trees echo the shouts and cheers of Johnny fans, young and old. Look upon us with love, we pray, and grant that the Chang Tennis Complex and its courts, the Karen Wendt Court, the Lattiser Court, the Mike Lilly Court, the Alfred Deutsch Court, the Raymond Rossini Court, and the Johnny Coaches Court, will be for your glory and well-being now and for years to come. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Please welcome from the class of 1981, Dr. Michael Hemeseth, President of St. John's University.
Thank you very much, Pete. Thank you, Abbot John. As Pete mentioned, I'm President of St. John's, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our alumni, parents, friends, and special guests, and maybe even the St. Mary's guys. Welcome if you're here. It's a wonderful day to celebrate St. John's tennis. This is a varsity sport that dates back 67 years on this campus to 1950. Though for the last 5 years, it actually has not been on this campus. As some of our players know, and Coach Bo knows as well as anyone, we did not have courts for the last 5 years. And so this is a particularly special day for us to bring tennis literally back to St. John's on our campus. This afternoon's dedication of the Chang Tennis Complex is truly special. Over the past 5 years, this beautiful meadow and the woods around us have been transformed into one of the most impressive and picturesque outdoor athletic complexes in the country. If you know where there's a more beautiful one, you let me know. I want to go visit. Without question, this new tennis complex was a dream shared by many of you here as well as many others. Bye. But however, like most projects of this kind, dreams can only become a reality when a handful of enthusiastic alumni and friends come together to make it happen. And a number of those people that helped make that happen are with us here today. We're blessed to have exceptional leadership and generosity for this project, and I'd like to recognize several of the individuals that have helped with this project today. First, our leadership, donors, Paul Winter, class of 1961, a proud Johnny. And his lovely wife, Leanne Chang, who first met Johnny, she told me, when she was in med school at the University of Minnesota, and she thought those Johnny guys were so nice, but she waited around until Paul was available. So, but his Johnny friends did a good job for him by doing us so proud. So we're extremely proud of this complex, and it's named in Dr. Chang's honor. Leanne is a physicist, not a physicist, psychiatrist, I know, MD, not PhD, sorry, psychiatrist who specializes in and loves working with the geriatric population. She consults for many nursing homes in the Twin Cities area and throughout the state of Minnesota. She was born and raised in Taiwan, the Republic of China, but she came to the United States in 1972 to receive a BS degree in human nutrition from Catholic Fujian University in Taiwan. After receiving her degree in Taiwan, she subsequently came here and got an MS degree in human nutrition by attending Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas, which I learned recently was the biggest women's college in the country, and that's appropriate because St. John's, of course, is the biggest men's college in the country. Years later, Leanne attended the University of Minnesota Medical School and completed her general psychiatric residency at the University of Minnesota. In 1995, she completed a geriatric psychiatry fellowship at the prestigious Geriatric Research, Education, and Clinical Centers of the Department of Veteran Affairs in Minnesota. Joining Paul and Leanne today are Leanne's sister, Nina, and her husband, Jerry. If you'd wave here. Oh wait, sorry, I'm a little confused about my seating arrangements here. So Nina and her husband, Jerry. Paul's brother Bill and his wife Mary Jane are here with us as well. And friends Pat and John Shaw are here as well, joining us. Also with us today are those who made major gifts to bring this project to completion and named one of the individual 7 courts behind me. Dave Wendt, class of 1963. Now I do have, on my right, David. He's here with his wife Renee Harberts, friend Jim Rayner, and friends Bill and Deanne Price. Dave named the Karin Wendt Court in honor of his late wife, Karin. The second court is named by Dr. Michael and Penny Ladashir, who are here with us with their 4 children, Alex, Zach, Sydney, and Mackenzie. Here we go, sorry. Michael and Penny named the court in honor of Michael's late parents, George and Marian Ladashir. Patrick and Renee Lilly, Patrick in the class of 1979 at St. John's, are joined by Pat's mother, Colleen, his sister, Colleen, a 1981 CSB grad. It's a great year, Colleen, as you know. His sister, Mary Wozniak, a 1987 St. Ben's grad, and her husband, Joe, and sister-in-law, Barb. Also with us today are several of the Lilly grandchildren. Andrew, a 2011 St. John's graduate. He's joined by David, Michael, and Maggie. Our deepest sympathies go to the entire Lilly family on the very sad passing of Pat's father, Leroy, just this past week. Leroy was a 1955 graduate of St. John's and a very proud and loyal Johnny, a great athlete in both baseball and football. The Lilly family has chosen to name the Michael Lilly Court in honor of their late son and brother who graduated from St. John's in 1978. Michael and Jane Murphy, Michael in the class of 1961, are here to honor a member of the monastery. They named the Alfred Deutsch Court in honor of the late Father Alfred Deutsch. Alfred was an English professor who loved Milton and the game of tennis, a liberal arts man to be sure. He served as a Johnny's coach from 1958 through 1963. I'm also pleased to welcome home Jamie and Penny Volin, who, together with Raymond Rossini's teammates and family, named the Raymond Rossini Court in honor of their late teammate, son, and brother. I'd also like to recognize several additional special guests. First of all, our St. John's tennis coaches, Jack and his assistant, very good. Current head coach Jack Bowe has been coaching the Johnnies since 1998. He can't quite believe it's been 20 years because it's only been 19, Jack. So there you go. He's managed the last 5 seasons without outdoor courts, as you know, so that's a little bit of a challenge, but he's done a great job over those 5 years, and I hope this is a small bit of compensation for the struggles you've had over the past 5 years, and I think this will be great for recruiting new Johnny athletes as well. Joining Jack, is Frank Fennessy, class of 1980. So Frank coached in 1984 and 85, working alongside Rob Culligan and John Young in the St. John's admissions office. Frank, I know your pain. You were at least smart enough to get out. Well, they've never said that. In addition, we'd like to welcome Coach Pat Hawes, who coached in 1983. As you know, Pat, of course, was our soccer coach, swimming coach. I think he also coached golf once or twice. Though when he coached golf, he told me he just gave the guys the keys to the car and said, "Let me know the scores when you guys get back." So Pat Hawes, class of 1982. Also from the class of 1972 is John Groby, who coached for 4 seasons, 75, 6, 7, and 8. He also helped provide some great Johnny students, and he's even made a small contribution to the monastery as well. His son Lou is Father Lou Groby, one of our great young monks at St. John's. Thank you, Lou. And finally, please welcome Tom Arth, in the class of 1966. Tom coached the Johnnies for 3 seasons, 64, 65, and 66. Clearly he was doing that as a student athlete coach. It's an interesting model. I'm not sure that our coaches would be delighted to bring it back, but thank you for doing it, Tom. I'm pleased to announce that a group of former tennis players have made gifts to name the Johnny Coaches Court in honor of these men and the following former coaches who are not able to be with us today. First, the late Jim Murphy, special coach in my mind. I didn't play for Jim, but he was the first professor I had on campus at St. John's. And those of you that knew Jim Murphy are probably amazed that having had Jim as my first class that I still stayed around. He was a character. He coached in 1995, 6, and 7, and the late Ed Murray coached in 1994. And they are all part of the Coaches Court. We also have the late Dick Schrader, who coached from 86 through 93, and also in 81 and 82. Jerry Fitzgerald, who coached in 73 and 4. Mike Philippi, who coached in 79 and 80. Jim DeShane, class of 1965, who coached 68 through 72. Jack Vandernorth, in class of 67, who coached his senior year. Pat Wagon, who coached in 1957, graduated in 1958. Raymond Maris, who coached in 1956. Lou Adderley, a famous St. John's alum from the Bahamas, who was a great tennis player here, who coached in 1955. Jim Payton coached in 1952, 3, and 4. He was a graduate of 1954. And finally, John Boren, class of 51, who was the first Johnny's coach in 1950 and 51. Thank you all for being here to honor these coaches today. But once again, looking at this list of coaches and the kind of turnover we had for lots of years, I want to give a special thanks to Jack for sticking around for 19 years. Let's do it for another 19. So thank you all for being here. Thanks to our donors and our many friends who are back for this event. Congratulations to Dr. Chang. And please give yourself one last round of applause for all the great things you did to make these beautiful courts possible.
Let us ask God's blessing on this new tennis complex and on all those who will use it. Praise be yours, O generous God, for you give the armor of light for our minds and strength to our bodies. By your gift of healthy recreation and bodily exercise, you renew our lives in your service. Mindful of the talented players, dedicated coaches, and zealous fans who have enjoyed the game of tennis on this campus, and grateful for alumnus Paul Winter and our generous donors, we have named this new tennis complex in honor of Paul's wife, Dr. Leanne Chang. And we now ask your blessing upon it. The psalmist tells us that yours is a mighty arm, O Lord. Your hand is strong, your right hand ready. Let some of your might be in the arms of our players. Grant that all who come here for practice, matches, and tournaments may find welcome and joy in teamwork and friendship. Keep coaches, players, and officials safe from harm and injury, and guide them in all that they do. Praise and honor and glory be yours, O God, through Jesus Christ, our Lord and brother, in the power of the Holy Spirit, both now and forever. Amen. So, Paul and Leanne, I'd like to present you with a framed copy of that blessing, okay?
Thank you very much.
And then I'd like you to help me sprinkle this cord here, okay? Leanne and Paul, if you join me. Oh, it could be very hot. Oh. Is it too hot?
No,
It's not too bad, okay?
Not at all.
Okay. Just sprinkle on in that general direction, okay? You can really douse it.
We now welcome to their respective courts our benefactors and our coaches to help us bless each court. So if you'd please come forward, we'll provide you with our holy water and we'll proceed to your respective court. Thank you.
And there's a lot of water. You can be really generous with it.
It's a very special feeling to be on the courts with so many different eras of tennis alumni and families and people with different connections to St. John's. We're so honored to have you all here. It looked like we got some great photographs taken out there and I heard some great memories coming up. Well, moving on with our program and the Chang dedication event, I'd like to welcome to the podium our lead benefactor from the class of 1961, Paul Winter.
Thanks everybody for coming. It really surprised me that we have a group this large. I'm not one who usually goes to a lot of ceremonies. We invited a bunch of friends. Leanne said, well, let's invite. And I said, well, why would they come? And so we invited 6 people. We actually invited Sister, but Sister Savannah from St. Ben's was not able to make it. She also wanted to come. But my brothers and sisters and her sister and brother-in-law, my friends, all came. About a month ago, I got an email from Rob and said, can you speak for 2 to 4 minutes about your love for tennis? And, I kind of thought about that and said, well, 2 to 4 minutes on my love for tennis, that seems like a long time. So I thought about it and I said, well, you're up there at the podium. What do you really want to tell these people? What do you want to tell them that they don't know? So thinking about it, I said, why the Chang Tennis Complex? Why should it be named after Leanne Chang? And so after I say just a few words about my experience with tennis, I wanted to talk a little bit about Leanne and why it's so appropriate to have this complex named after her. Yeah, when I graduated from high school in 1957, I came to St. John's. When I came to St. John's, I had never played tennis. Approximately about my junior year, a group of us started playing tennis on the tennis courts at St. John's, and I really grew to love the game. And this game has been a part of my life ever since. I'm still playing tennis today. I live half the time in Florida, and I live half the time in Minnesota, and I have a great time playing in both places. So it's really great, I think, for dedication of these fantastic tennis courts, which, as my friend John says, are far better than any courts we've ever played on. So moving on to the second part, the most important part. Why the Chang Tennis Complex? I tried to think about, the various attributes of my wife. And the one that struck me the most can be put in two ways. One is what she says. If you ask her, can you do this? Invariably, her answer is, yes, I can. So it's her belief in herself and this belief that she can do it and this positive attitude of always being able to do things. Michael Hemeth, mispronounced, of course. Sorry about that. But I was going to, give a few examples of the important things in her life and why she accomplished them and so on. And Michael, of course, has told you all those. But I would like to go back and just review. In 1970, 22 years of age, Leanne graduated from college in Taipei. And she was looking around for an opportunity of what to do. And the scholarship became available at TWC, Texas Women's College. And she said, I'm going to apply for that. I can do that. So she got the scholarship. She immigrated to America with a scholarship to TWC with $100 in her pocket, and then made her life as an immigrant in the United States. In 1986, she decided she wanted to become a doctor. So being married, she then moved to Minneapolis, age 36, and said, yes, I can. I can become a doctor. Went through medical schools, and as Michael said, met a bunch of Johnnies. Said as all Johnnies are, they were well-rounded, study hard, play hard. So what I think is what you can take, hopefully what the players, the people who come here will take from her life, everybody, the entire complex, the students, the faculty, everybody, come with the belief in yourself, I can do it, and then do it.
Thank you, Paul. And I believe your wife, Dr. Leanne Chang, would like to make a couple comments. Please welcome Dr. Chang.
Friends, family, and dignitaries. It's a great pleasure, and I'm grateful this complex named Chang Tennis Complex. I'm Chinese born, but I'm very proud to be an American doctor. I started my medical practice in Minnesota. I met my wonderful husband in Minnesota. Andre Agassi said, tennis uses the language of life. Advantage, service, fault, break, love. The basic elements of tennis are those of everyday existence, because everyday match is a life in miniature. Thank St. John University again. I hope for continuing success of St. John's tennis team. Let me close by thank you once again for this honor.
Thank you, Dr. Chang. And I'd like to welcome from the class of 1963, Dave Wendt.
Thank you very much. I am moved that this is named from somebody that came from another country, as my wife Karen came from Schweinfurt, Germany. a survivor of World War II. She was 4 years old when our occupation troops came through her town. They've been introduced, but I want to refer to my wife and best friend, Renee, my sister, Deanna, and her husband, Bill, fathers Don Talifus and Hillary Timish, who mean so much to us, my friend, close friend, Steve May, and last but not least, who helped support our tennis, and Dr. James Rainier, and his wife, Chris, who could not be here, but Joe, who worked or knew Karen extremely well. Jim lost his wife just as Karen was coming to work for him. And as the Rainier family knows, she helped get him through Benilde and later on. In any event, when Rob Culligan learned that Karen had a fatal disease and that she was an enthusiastic tennis player, he approached me about sponsoring a tennis court for Karen, and I immediately said yes. It was absolutely perfect. It would be a way to remember Karen, and she's buried in the cemetery on the south side of the campus, in the alumni section of the cemetery, and where she rests. And we just visited her, and brought her flowers, and told her that she's now going to be on the north side as well. So if there's an iron dome that goes over, you're being protected by a German forever. So everyone that knew Karen knew that she exhibited empathy, love, caring, especially the hundreds on her birthday list, which goes on single space and I haven't been able to keep it up, but my sister said, don't even try. That was Karen. She would never allow anyone to give her any praise or accolades. She'd always downplay her role for a job well done. She teamed up with Jim Rainier, and together Jim became CEO of Honeywell Minneapolis, one of our great companies, and they indeed were a team through some great years. Once during a reunion, I mentioned to a classmate that while I graduated from St. John's, Karen adopted St. John's as her American home. The monks were all speaking German when we were up here, and when Karen got here, we only had 5 dates in 5 months when we got married. So we were virtual strangers, and I was in the aviation insurance business, and I was never home. And when I did come home, she said, "This is no marriage." And I realized I was going to have probably one of the shortest marriages of any St. John's guy ever. So I brought her up here on a homecoming weekend, and she fell in love with it, and immediately our marriage started to get straightened out, and we had 45 phenomenal years. Don Talifus and Hillary and I celebrate Karen's day to death every year on Hillary's March 2nd birthday. And we'll do that as long as any of us are around. Karen's mother is still alive in Germany. She's a young 90 years old, and they take great comfort that the monks of St. John's are looking over their daughter and taking great care of her. She loved tennis and racquetball and played many years with a men's group that included 2 former NFL football players. One of them has 2 Super Bowl rings. And they've told me many times that the toughest competition she ever had was Karen Wendt. She would never back down, men or women. She was in it to win. The weekend she was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. She was scheduled to play in a tennis tournament, and she and her partner were convinced they were going to win it. And as you know, when you get AML, you have to get chemo that night. And so this court will be a fitting tribute to her and her life. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dave. And we'd like to welcome Mike Lattiser from the class of 1979.
Unlike my predecessors, I have no prepared statement. Otherwise, I would wax on far too long. Some history. George and Marion, wonderful parents. I'm an only child. I think they figured out they got it right the first time. But got my start in tennis back in one summer after sixth grade with a racket that was purchased with S&H green stamps. For those of you who may remember some of that. Progressed on, got to St. John's and was just immediately overwhelmed by just the wonder of this place, and met John Groby on the admissions process and was welcomed to the team. And during those 4 years that I had the privilege of playing and representing St. John's, we had some very wonderful times. Got to know Mike Lilly incredibly well, and great to see you all out here. I'm humbled and honored and delighted that so many friends and my family could join me to honor my mom and dad and to honor tennis. It's provided some great things for my life. It's opened doors. It's allowed me to do many of the things that I've been able to accomplish. And thank you and praise the Lord.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for making the trek from Tennessee. It's great to have you here. Also from the class of 1979, now giving the class of 81 a run for their money, is Pat Lilly.
I promise to be short. Our family's honored to be here today to celebrate the opening of this wonderful tennis facility. People may associate our family with Johnny football, and that's for a good reason. Leroy, my father, played for the first John Ghilardi team back in 1953, and we've been attending Johnny football games since the 1960s. And we've been season ticket holders as long as I can remember. Others see us as a Johnny soccer family, and we are. 3 of us brothers played soccer here at St. John's. But the one sport our whole family played was tennis. My sisters Colleen and Mary played at St. Ben's. My brother Mike and myself played here at St. John's. And a few years ago, I was contacted by our former coach, John Groby. I was kind of wondering if I forgot to turn my gear in. What the heck would Groby call me for? But he said he had an idea he wanted to pass along. And he wanted to know if it would be possible to tap into the much larger pool of Johnny soccer alums and friends to honor Mike with a tennis court in his name, and at the same time help the tennis facility project get moving along. And I was fortunate that I took him up on that and hooked my wagon up to John. And we also had tremendous support working with the St. John's alumni staff with Troy Fritz and Peter Amon and John Young. And we also passed the idea past the former Johnny soccer great Mike Cummings, who was also responsible for raising money for the soccer field, and he worked with us as well. So at that time, I called my dad to check out his interest in this project. And keep in mind, this is a football and baseball guy. And he said without hesitation, I'm in. And he said, who needs a facility more than the tennis team? And he said, it's great timing because he goes, next month is my final contribution to the baseball project. So I think we went live, the day we went live to accept contributions, we had $16,000 that first day. And if you really think about this, this is really quite incredible. Soccer alums joining tennis alums and other friends, just coming together to help get this tremendous tennis facility built. And really, it's what the Johnny Spirit's all about. Everybody just working together, help each other out for the common good, and that's really what this is. The Lilly family wants to thank all those contributions that made Mike's tennis court possible. All the friends, teammates, classmates, coaches, and St. John's administration who are so grateful. We are so grateful for this honor. We also want to wish the Johnny tennis team the best of luck now and in the future. We want to make this the hardest place to come out to play in the MIAC, and that includes Gustavus. You guys have good leadership with Coach Bo for 20 years and Coach English for 8 years. And the tennis team at St. John's is like the epitome of Division III sports. They got good athletes, good students, good people, good alumni, and we just wish you guys the best, and we're very proud of you.
Thank you, Pat. We'd like to welcome from the class of 1961, Michael Murphy.
Hey, Pete, you said I should keep this under a half an hour? 30 seconds. All right. Dave went, we're going to get back to the German theme now, because I'm going to talk about Alfred Deutsch. Okay. The plaque on the Alfred Deutsch dedicated court says of him that he was a Rice Street boy, a Milton man, and of course our tennis coach. And for Rice Street, I don't know if you're familiar with St. Paul, but for those of you who may not be, it's the main commercial and traffic artery that runs out through the legendary north end of St. Paul. It starts behind the Capitol building and goes out to Larpenteur and beyond to the Tony gated gates of the North Oaks Country Club. Now, there was nothing Tony about the North End that Alfred grew up in. I can assure you it's the same today. It was a rough and ready blue-collar neighborhood of immigrants, mainly Germans from Bavaria and Austria, who were Alfred's people. And they gathered around the parish there, St. Bernard's, which is it was a Benedictine parish, was founded and run by the Benedictines. Alfred was recruited to come up to St. John's by his uncle, Abbot Elquin, who I believe it's right, Abbot John, that he was the longest-serving abbot in the history of St. John's Abbey. So he attended, Alfred did, the prep school, the college, the seminary here. After he was ordained, he went off to the University of Illinois to get his graduate degree and his PhD degree in English literature, specializing in Milton. He wrote his PhD thesis on John Milton, the famous 17th century English poet, Paradise Lost, Paradise Regained, all that stuff, When Alfred started playing tennis here, the courts were up on the hill above the football court, the football field. And you can see pictures of them. They were this messy lot of clay courts. So in the springtime, the Johnnies couldn't play tennis there because it was always raining and snowing, and you couldn't play on clay in that kind of weather. So they, unfortunately for years, had to play their matches at their opponents' hard surface courts, which caused Alfred and others eventually to lobby for some good, solid, new, modern hard courts, which of course many of you here will remember were across the Abbey Road, just across the road from the Warner Palestra, where they were installed in 1956. If this were true, I would say that the kind of ace in the hole argument that Alfred made in persuading the school to build the new tennis courts was that the building of them would be a condition of my coming to play here in 1957. If that were true, I would say that. Alfred himself was a very accomplished tennis player, and I remember one day coming down here for practice, and he invited me out to play a set of tennis, and it was a very typically windy spring day, and I was having a lot of trouble with my service toss, and I had all I could do to keep it from flying down to the next court. So after 3 or 4 futile attempts at this, I just stopped and signaled to him I was going to wait till the wind died down. And he looked back at me and he called over to me through the wind and he said, "Mike, it's okay, Mike. Remember that line from Milton. Those also serve who only stand and wait." Which was typical of his puckish sense of humor and how he kept us off guard. So Alfred as I think I mentioned, was or somebody mentioned, was coach here from 1957 through 63 or 4, I guess, when Tom Arth took over. Alfred would want me to mention this, and I'd be remiss not to mention to you that Tom Arth's sister Jeannie is with him here today, and I'd like to point her out because she is Minnesota's only Wimbledon tennis champ. So Jeannie Arth, would you? Yeah. A little known fact, but it should be better known. Now it is. Jeannie Arth and her partner Darlene Hard from California won Wimbledon in women's doubles in 1959. Alfred died in 1989, and I know that if he were here with us today, that he would be wowed by these new facilities. I know what he would say. I knew him very well. He was my tennis coach. He was head of the English department. I was an English major. He was a prefect on Tommy Hall, where I was as a senior. So we were good friends. I know exactly what he would say. I can see the broad smile on his face now, and I can hear that husky voice of his. And he would look at this and he would say, "Wow, Mike," he would say, "this is a far cry from that Grendel's Fen that we used to have to play on up in the hill there, that clay mass of stuff. This is a beautiful facility. I would say that this is paradise regained."
Thank you very much, Mike. Well said. We'd like to welcome Jamie Volland from the class of 1970. Jamie.
Well, I come from the infamous class of 1970, and it was a great honor for me to play tennis alongside my friend Ray Rosini. Ray was probably, guys, the most colorful tennis player to ever play at St. John's University. One time when we were playing McAllister, the coach of McAllister didn't like us. We were beating up on McAllister at the time, and they had one of the best teams in the MIAC. But Ray had a juggle serve. Guys, really, a juggle serve. And it was legal. You remember that, John? Yeah. It's sort of cool because Larry Gady and John Groby played on that tennis team with me, and we loved it. We won the MIAC number 1, number 2, and number 3 doubles, for example. So we had a good team at that time. Ray, fellas, and I'm talking to the tennis team, he did not have any classic tennis strokes, but he probably had the best eye-hand coordination I've ever seen. Nobody could beat him in ping pong, for example. I mean, the guy was a magician. And in fact, freshman year at St. John's, he and his friend Jim Hamburg had a juggle show at the variety show. It was really amazing. And Ray would embody St. John's tenets and St. John's spirit. Father John, you would just love it if you would have met him. He was as big as you are, 6'3", but the guy was just full of life, and it was exciting to be his friend. Penny and I were close friends of Ray. In fact, Ray was a lawyer's lawyer, and our first will that we did was with my friend Ray. And you'd like to know that I could have got it done in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, much cheaper, but he said, "I gave you a clergyman's discount." And so, anyway, this is a tremendous facility, and to me, it's awe-inspiring because we have all these great Johnny people here, and to celebrate, Ray's memory permanently is awesome, and his family are here with us. So Penny and I are honored to be his friend and his teammate. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, Rossini family, for being here. We're nearing the end. We're almost there. I'd like to welcome to the podium our current coach, Jack Bowe, who in his 19 years has coached a few dozen All-MIAC players. He delivers his knowledge to the players. They carry it forward to play lifetimes of tennis. So, Jack Bowe.
Thanks, Pete. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. What a great opportunity. Thank you for the fantastic donations and contributions for the facility. I just looking back of me and look across this court, I cannot believe how lucky that I am to be able to coach here at St. John's and have been in here 19 or 20 years, not sure which one. But it's so exciting. I can't put it into 2 minutes. There's no way. As far as the recruiting factor, I'm already seeing we've got 10 already signed for next year. 4 of those players will be impact players. It's because of this. It is. I just want to thank everybody. What a great honor to be here with everybody on this side, to be honored with the coaches. I've had to know a few of them. I was able to see Dick Schroeder several times before and was able to go to his tribute last year. He was a great mentor of mine. Jamie knows another tennis coach of mine was Reed Hans. He passed away this year. So a lot of good memories. I feel so fortunate. As far as the team goes, 19 years of working with the classiest, most well-represented players. I cannot be honored enough. These guys work so hard in the classroom, and they work so hard on the court. There hasn't been a year where we have not had an ITA award for academics. Our tennis team has always come through with the greatest in the classroom. So it's just a great honor. It's fun to see all the alums come back. I see a few that I haven't seen traveled. I see a few that have traveled quite a distance to get here. It's just a great honor. The team over here today, I'll speak a little bit about, it's just a great group. We do play St. Mary's today. I have to speak a little quieter now because in about 15 minutes we'll have to turn on the game face. And yes, when I went over to sprinkle my court, I did splash a little extra water over there. I didn't say that. I did not say that. No. We're going to win fair and square. So we are struggling a little bit. We're a very young team. We have 3 matches left. If we do win the next 3 matches, we will qualify for the playoffs. So we're very, very excited about that. Great opportunities for our team in the next 2 weeks to finish out. Very young team. We do not have any seniors this year. We've got 1 junior, and then the rest are sophomore freshmen. So very young, and we did graduate 4 solid players last year, 4 seniors that are all here today in honor of these courts. So it's fantastic. So I'll stop there, but thank you everybody for coming, and we're good luck today. Hopefully you can stick around for a while.
Well, one last time, please give a round of applause for our lead benefactors, all of the other people here who have made gifts to the project, to our tennis team, to our coaches, to the families of all of these people. What a fantastic day. Thank you for coming. Thank you for honoring St. John's and everybody here. Go Johnnies.